Hey everyone, welcome back. Today I am giving you a revamped version of our sticky toffee sweet potato cake. It's one of our most popular cake recipes. It is so scrumptious, so much fun to serve to guests, and you'll see why. And I keep making this recipe, and I found a way to make it even more delicious, which is why we decided to re-record this. As always, we start by preheating our oven. We're preheating at 350 degrees Fahrenheit, which is about 180 Celsius. And we have to prepare our pan. So I always recommend a springform pan where you can remove the bottom. And I've cut a circle of parchment paper for the bottom. And we do want to add a bit of non-dairy butter or oil to the sides of our pan and dust with a bit of flour as well. Next up, we need to measure out our sweet potato and get it steaming in a steamer basket. I have this massive one, which I think is gonna be plenty. You always want to peel it, and we're gonna cut this into an even dice so that all of the pieces get cooked at the same time. What I have here is a simple pot with some water, a steamer basket. I'm gonna add in my sweet potato cubes and spread them out, cover, and I'm just gonna let these steam until they are very tender, fork tender. And it's very helpful to steam it because if you were to cook these in water, you could get them very waterlogged, and that's gonna water out your recipe. So always when using sweet potato in a baked good, steaming or even roasting would be a good idea. But with roasting, you get a bit of a skin, a bit of a toughness outside. So steaming is really the way. Whenever I'm baking a cake, people ask me, what are you using to substitute the eggs? And in this recipe, we are using the power of apple cider vinegar combined with leaveners like baking soda and baking powder, but also dates. So the dates that I'm using for this recipe are gonna provide both the sweetness, or most of the sweetness, but also enough acidity to create that reaction that's gonna leaven this cake. It's magical, and you're gonna see why in a second. I have some all-natural pitted dates, and by all natural, I mean you have to buy the dates that don't come with that sugary glaze or that glucose glaze. They look pretty much identical, so you really have to check the ingredients. And I'm just gonna give this a very, very fine chop. Be patient, it's sticky, I know. One thing you can do is you can rub a little bit of oil on your blade, and that helps with the stickiness, but I just go straight in, knowing what I'm facing. Let's mix together our dry ingredients. I have some all-purpose flour in this bowl. I'm gonna add some whole wheat flour and our new addition, which made such a difference in this cake in both texture, flavor, and that is some oat flour. We're also adding some baking powder, lots of it. Cinnamon, and of course some salt. Let's whisk this together, make sure everything is well incorporated, especially all those different kinds of flours, which you can't really tell, so you have to give it a minute. We're gonna set this aside. Our sweet potatoes should be tender by now, and we're gonna grab a standing mixer to incorporate our batter and mash up that sweet potato. If you don't have a standing mixer, you can absolutely do the rest of the process by hand. Just the standing mixer is gonna whip up the sweet potato with the non-dairy butter, and it's gonna give us this sort of very whipped and airy texture that is really lovely. But you can mash it if you don't have one, and then incorporate it. That's just fine. I've added the sweet potato to the bowl in my standing mixer, and I'm going to add some non-dairy butter, which is room temperature. And I'm gonna turn this on high and get all of that mushy and incorporated and start to get that whipped. Once it's mostly creamed up, I'm gonna add my sweetener, which is going to be some maple syrup and some vanilla extract. And we're gonna let this continue whipping up. I'm now going to turn the machine on, and I'm going to start adding my dry mix slowly. What you should have at this stage is this very crumbly dough, almost like a cookie dough. It's not ready yet. It needs our wet ingredients, but it's in the wet ingredients where the magic happens. So we're gonna pause this process right here, and we're gonna hit the stove. I'm adding some non-dairy milk to a pot. Any kind of non-dairy milk you have and you like. And I'm adding my chopped dates into this milk. I brought my mixture up to a boil, and this is softening our dates. It's also flavoring that milk with the dates. It smells so delicious. I'm gonna turn off the heat now, and we're gonna watch this magic happen. We are adding some baking soda, and you're going to start seeing how this mixture grows and bubbles. Look at that. This is our leavening action. Look at that growth. Immediately, we're adding our apple cider vinegar to intensify this effect. It's magic. Now we turn on our mixer and we start incorporating this liquid mixture into our batter. We don't want any of that gluten in the flour developing here. We want a very fluffy and sort of moist cake. And so for that, always keep it on low so as not to work it too much, and just mix until incorporated. If you have a few lumps here and there, it's totally fine. We should have a thick and quite chunky batter that smells so good. We're gonna add this into our prepared pan. I like to bang it just a couple of times to release any bubbles, though you shouldn't have that many. We're gonna go and pop this in the oven. We're gonna bake until a toothpick comes out clean. And if you have any hot spots on your oven, remember that it's always a good idea to rotate your pan halfway through the process. Look at that golden color. My cake was in my oven for about 45 minutes. Usually takes between 40 to 45. You want to insert a toothpick and see that it comes out clean. You're gonna get a little bit of crumb in the tip, but what you don't want is a lot of wet batter. That would require more baking. So we're gonna let this cool in the pan for about 5 to 10 minutes just to let it settle a little bit. And then we're gonna remove it from the pan and let it cool completely on a cooling rack. Carefully run a knife just to make sure that your cake is nicely separated from the mold, and it should be perfectly separated. Let's open this up. If you've got a lot of doming in the oven, one option you have is to grab a serrated knife and very carefully slice a bit of a cap off of the cake just so that it lays flat. This is going to be the bottom of our cake. Very carefully flip it onto your cooling rack. We're gonna let this cool completely before pouring our toffee sauce over the cake. Now we get to make the most decadent, delicious part of this cake, and it's that classic toffee sauce that we're gonna pour on top. So you're gonna grab a small pot and turn the heat on high, and we're going to add some non-dairy butter, vanilla extract, brown sugar or panela, and some non-dairy heavy cream. If you can't find heavy cream where you live, you can make some of our cashew sour cream, but without adding the lemon, and just have it be the consistency of heavy cream. And you can gauge the water amount you add based on that. You wanna make sure to whisk vigorously, and as soon as everything is incorporated and nicely melted, we lower the heat and we cook on low for about 2 minutes. What you should see is a silky smooth sauce where everything is nicely diluted and incorporated. I'm just gonna set this aside for a second just to cool it down slightly, but I love the warm toffee sauce on this cake. When I serve this cake, I serve it right on the cake stand or platter where I'm going to serve it. And I give each one of my guests a skewer or a chopstick for the real winners. And I tell them that they must now poke holes in this cake so that when we pour the toffee sauce on top, it seeps into those sort of little tunnels that form. And it gives us the stickiest, most moist and sweet and delicious cake when you cut into this. When I serve it for Halloween, I call it murdered cake. So you must now do exactly that. Give your toffee sauce a final whisk and you're ready to pour. You can pour it all or you can pour slightly and then serve more next to your cake so people can add more. That's it for your sticky toffee sweet potato cake. I hope you make it at home. It is absolutely divine and people have great fun with it. I hope you make it and tell us how it went. I'm gonna cut up a slice and try it. Wow. That's so good. You can taste the cinnamon. You can taste the sweet potato. The toffee sauce is creamy. It adds all of the extra sweetness this cake needs. And the crumb of this cake, oh, it's so moist and fluffy. I hope you love it.